Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning. Parents, what if we could give you the power to transform your family into something absolutely amazing?
A family where everyone is healthy, gets along, loves Jesus, and has great purpose in life.
Hey, let us flip your thinking to unlock the power God has given you to create your own Crazy Cool family. Hey, welcome parents. We are so excited to be with you again for our Crazy Cool Family Podcast. Today we're going to talk about listening versus the other dreaded L word, lecturing. Don't you just, even when you hear the word lecture, you're like, oh my goodness.
Shut up.
Yeah, it's
what
like
I think. Shh, don't stop talking. Stop talking.
Here's what I think. One is I do it, but two, I don't like it being done to me.
Right.
And so we're going to talk about what that looks like because we actually have a purpose to our lectures. Parents so often are trying their best to help their kids through a lecture. And then they wonder, though, why their kids tune them out, why lectures are not effective. Why really what we wonder is why our instruction's not effective.
Right.
Why our kids aren't listening to us. And
it just doesn't work. It should, because it's packed full of all that information
oh my
and
goodness,
wisdom, right?
We are so smart. And yet our kids don't see it that way. But I think what we want to do today is give you, we know the results you want. You want to impart wisdom to your kids. You want your kids to make wise choices. We want it too for our kids. We're going to give you a different way to do that. And really a more effective way to accomplish the results you want to accomplish.
Because reality is you do have a lot of experiences that when you share those with your children, they will benefit from those experiences. It's the method. It's the delivery system. When it is delivered through a lecture, then all that amazing wisdom and those experiences are put to the wayside in our child's minds, hearts, and emotions, because the lecture has actually shut them down.
In one ear and out the other. Isn't that what's
sometimes it doesn't even go in one ear.
Exactly.
They just have shut down all hearing, and they're put their little face down, and they don't even look at you anymore. And then at that point, oh, I'm not getting anywhere now.
I've never had a parent come up to me and say, you know what, my kid just listens to me all the time.
Loves my lectures.
Yes. Everything I say, they hang on my every word.
Nor have you had your children... Have our children said to us, oh, please lecture me more, Mom. Please, Dad.
Please give me more advice.
Yes, that was such good wisdom. Talk more at me. Talk more at me.
Don't listen to me more. So what we'd love to do today is to paint a scene for you and just to paint the lecture scene versus the listening scene.
And so let's say your teacher has reached out and communicated with you as the parent and said, your child is missing 6 assignments and they're failing my class right now.
And maybe even, and they're lethargic about school, and maybe even what they're turning in is not very good. And you start to look at their grades, and there's zeros all over the place, and then 70s, and it's in 2 or 3 classes, not just one class. And so there is so can we just point out, there's a real issue here.
Right. And it's been brought to your attention. And I think that a lot of the times the first thing we as parents do is we kind of freak out a little bit, like, oh my gosh, my child's failing. This is bad.
Yes.
And so then that gets us wound up. And then our go-to is, I need to tell them about it. I need to lecture them. I need to give them all of...
We are going to have to talk about this.
Yes. Which is crazy, because it's not a we are going to have to talk. It's you're going to sit there and I'm going to talk at you and tell you. I mean, we say things like, well, when I was your age, I didn't do this.
Yeah, I made great grades.
Yeah. Or how are you going to get into college if you have grades like this?
Your sister was such a good student.
Oh, that's the worst. Or didn't I raise you better than this? I didn't. We would. Mannings don't turn in zeros. That's the worst thing ever. We don't do that.
Yeah. Go to your room right now and get all your assignments done and bring them back to me immediately. Can you picture?
Yeah, you're grounded for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, and then put in about 1 million more words around those statements, and that's what our kids get from us when they have failed.
And for me, usually those 1 million words are the same thing repeated about 4,000 times. Now,
and as the child shuts down more and more, they get a little louder, don't they?
Oh,
because the child's not hearing, right? So you need to talk louder.
We've got to be clearer. We got to be more. We got to make sure that they are heard, because they didn't hear hear us the 8th time, so surely they're going to hear us the 12th time, right? And so, and usually, and let's talk about the way the kid's responding.
Right.
So when you look at your kid and they're counting it, we think, oh, this lecture is effective because they feel bad about it. No, they may feel bad about it, and that's true. And we can talk about the effect of that in a minute. But really what they're doing is they're just going, okay, if I will shut up and say nothing, this will stop sooner.
Right.
Because here's what happens. If they say something, here we come with more.
Lecture 2.0,
Yeah,
3.0, 4.0, whatever sentence they give us, then we have a lecture teed up for that one as well.
Because they'll give us an excuse. Well, the teacher didn't tell us where the assignment was. Oh my goodness, you've got to listen more. What kind of student are you? Everybody else turned it in.
Right.
All the things that we're going to, and so there, we've seen it happen with our kids time and time again. They will just shut down until it's over, and then they will leave, and we don't know what impact we've had.
Right. Well, and chances are we haven't had the impact of helping them solve the problem, because all we did is told them that there is a problem, and they actually translate that to I am the problem.
Right.
They don't know any different. They don't know how to separate what our words, our negative words to them, when we say those things to them in that lecture format, then what all they really hear is, I'm a failure, I'm no good, mom and dad don't like me, my teachers don't like me. That's how they translate it.
I can't do this.
I can't. And they don't, yeah.
And so, and so often we are doing it. I want you to think about not only the words we say, but also the tone that we're using, and like we're saying, if the child tries to get a word in, many times that ratchets up our tone, and we become, because it seems like they're defiant, and so
Right.
we are going, and we are angry because we are scared, we are embarrassed, we are all these things that has happened, and we want to take care of it. And if you're in the business world, it becomes like this business problem that you're going to solve. And it's, so often it's not a business problem. It's a relationship problem. It is a motivation problem. It is it's an identity problem. And so let's contrast that with the listening scene, and listen, I want to go back to this, that we're trying to do we have the same intentions. What's our intention? We want our kid to do school. What's the purpose of the lecture or the listening? It is to get our kids to understand the value of school, to understand how to not get zeros on their assignments, to be motivated. We want them to communicate with us, to communicate with their teachers in both scenarios.
Ask for help when they need it, to
Yeah.
have those communication lines open, either with the teacher or with the parent.
We have the same. In both cases, we have the same objectives. But let's think about this. So let's start out by trying to get the child to talk first, and going to them and saying, hey, okay, let's say that the child's name is, give me a name, is Ryan. Okay, so Ryan, we got a problem here. It's come to our attention that there's some zeros here, and we were looking at your grades, and there's some issues here. Can we talk about that? And so let's maybe just opening up the lines of communication, because Suzanne, and you're so good at this. What's our goal first with a child? Rather than lecture him and tell him what our objective is, what are you trying to get out of the child at first?
So we want to understand the child. We want to understand where the child's coming from. We want like you said, we want the communication lines open between the mom and the dad, but something's going on. If there's 6 zeros that are going on, there's missing assignments. That is a red flag for us as parents, that somewhere along the way my child is not succeeding. And that's what we're much more concerned, that they're not succeeding than that they are failing. And so the best person to ask why they're not succeeding is the child themselves, and find out what it is that's happening inside their little hearts and their little minds that are preventing them from succeeding. And so I always want to hear from the child, Ryan, help me understand, buddy, what's going on? Let's start with the very first assignment. What happened here? And he says whatever it is that he says, and we receive that. Oh, I understand that. Well, what about the next one? And then he says that, and it might sound like a long list of excuses for you parents, but if you will just take the time and listen to each and every one of them, then you will see a pattern. There will be something that bubbles up because you know your child best. And so you'll be able to say, okay, all right, Ryan's actually overwhelmed. This class is too hard for him. Ryan is confused. Ryan is being bullied in class. I don't know what the answer is. Only your child knows the answer. But if you listen to him, then you will know the answer.
Well, and you said so much in there, and let me kind of bring some things to light. One of them is, at the very first, realize when you've brought it up to your child, and so now you've automatically put them on the defensive because they are faced with a problem. So that's the time to be, if you're angry, go somewhere else for a while till you can not be angry anymore, and then come in, and that's the time to be careful with your words. Because if you so often, here's what happens. We try, and I know I'm terrible at this. I've gotten better over the time, but what happens is I start out so well. Hey, tell me about this. And immediately they tell me about it. Well, in about 10 seconds, I've got the answer. But I really don't have the answer, but I think I do. And so now I jump right in.
It's called assume-a-side, parents, where we assume we know what's best, and we assume we know what our kids are going to say. We assume that we have the answer.
Yeah, and just one of the things I tell...
And we might have the answer, but the goal is we don't need to have the answer. They need to have the answer. They need to discover the answer. They need to come up with it on their own. And that's our goal, is not to tell them, it's to help them discover it.
Well, and so often I don't really have the answer. I need to listen more. And one of the things we tell parents a lot is, you've always got the discipline in your pocket. You've always got time to do it. But first we listen, and it's going to feel like so often that it's kind of a waste of time because your child's just making excuses or whatever. But like Suzanne's saying, is we're careful with our words, and we're trying to draw out, and we're just letting them talk. There's no condemnation at that point. There's nothing. There's no judgment. Just letting them talk, trying to discern what that pattern is. What's the reason? What's the real reason? I left my, here comes all the excuses. I left my homework. The dog ate it. Whatever it is. But in reality, you'll start to see a pattern of what's going on, so that, and then Suzanne went to that, but because the ultimate goal, if you think about it, in a lecture, what we do is we tell them over, we don't listen to them, and we tell them over and over and over what they're doing wrong and how they can fix it. In the listening situation, what are we doing? We're listening first and drawing it out of them to help them come to the conclusion. And so, because what's the downside of a lecture? Well, it's one thing is you're closing pathways of communication. A lecture is all one-sided. It's all about you talking and getting on to them, right?
Yeah, the definition means long, tedious reprimand.
Oh, that sounds fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so nobody wants to be a part of that. And like you said, it closes the doors. It makes you unsafe. It makes you, as a parent, unapproachable. The child doesn't want to talk to you. And it's really cool how God sets it up, because you're going to start having opportunities to either lecture or listen from when your children are little, and as they grow up, you're going to have more and more opportunities. And so the more you choose to listen instead of lecture, then when the big things happen, like they get a traffic citation, or they get in a car wreck, or they have a bad relationship with a girl or a boy, a girlfriend or boyfriend, they're going to talk to you then, because you've proven yourself along the way with no lectures by listening.
Well,
it's valuable to start even in a young age.
Lectures. When you lecture your child repeatedly, you are training your child to feel dumb.
Right.
You're training your child to tune you out.
Right. And to not trust you as a parent.
Yeah. And you're training your children to lie.
Yeah.
You're training your children
And
to
to
hide.
hide.
Exactly. And so, do you want to train your child to do that? If you do, go ahead and lecture your heart out.
Yeah.
And realize, parents, we're not talking about giving instruction. A lecture's different than giving instruction. Sometimes,
Well, it's all about timing. And so by all means give instruction, but don't give it in the heat of the moment when your child's been caught in a failure. Give it when you're talking about their friends, and you can give them a piece of information. Oh, this is how you treat your friends, or when you're watching even a TV show and a scene comes up and you're like, oh yeah, I wouldn't do it that way, and I wouldn't want you to do it that way. You can give your pieces of wisdom and experience all the time, all day long, but not in the heat of a moment when it comes to them in their failure.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You're out with your child and you want to show them how to throw a baseball. Well, you're going to give them instruction. You're going to say, okay, do your shoulder like this, and that's giving instruction. We do, and we can do that wrong too. But I mean, but I want to try to contrast with you the lectures versus instruction versus the listening. We're dealing with, usually the lectures we're angry, we are coming down on them, we are, heavy-handed versus...
Well, they've embarrassed us. They've enlisted something in us that's a reaction or a response. That's not what happens when you're giving instruction.
And so what are the benefits of listening? Well, number one, like Suzanne was saying, it opens up our kids' heart to us. It opens up the line of communication. Suzanne says this a lot, that it shows the kid that we are trustworthy.
Well, they want, when they fail, they want to come to their parents. I mean, if you're going to listen to them and if you're going to help them come to a solution, then the first person they think of is, I want to tell my mom. I want to tell my dad. I want my dad to help me with this situation. I can't do this on my own. But if they're thinking, a lot of kids think, if I tell my dad this, he's going to yell at me. If I tell my mom this, she's going to ground me.
I'm going to get in such trouble.
I'm going to get in such trouble.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going after, parents, is that, no, let's not. They might get in trouble on the back end of it, but we don't want them to think that. The first thought we want them to think is, my mom and dad can help me with this.
So the very thing that, you think about it, the teacher came to you, not the child in this scenario, with the 6 zeros.
Right.
Okay. What if that child was scared to come to you as a parent because of previous lectures?
Right.
And instead, what if you built that trust? What if the child came to you after zero number 2 and said, hey, I'm not getting this. I don't know what to do or whatever. And then because you were trustworthy, and plus...
Well, chances are the teacher has communicated with the child first anyway. Along the way, like you said, at zero number 2, at zero number 3, the teacher has communicated. And where was the breakdown that the child didn't communicate with the parent? And so that's what we want to do, parents, is we want that connection to be so strong with our child that when they see failure on the horizon coming, or they're in the middle of failure, then the person that they think that they want help from is mom and dad, because they know mom and dad are going to listen to them and not lecture them.
Well, and then we listen on the front end, and that's beneficial because we're building trust.
Yeah.
Then we allow them to come to conclusions on the back end, so it helps them to grow in their own wisdom and their own discovery of right and wrong. It gives us insight into their thoughts, their feelings, because so on the front end you're building trust. On the back end, once you've listened and you start to come to, okay, how are we going to solve this?
Yeah.
How are we going to? We know that you don't want zeros, right? You don't want to go back and repeat 8th grade or 5th grade or whatever. What are we going to do to solve this? You don't want to be getting zeros and stuff. So we get a doorway to speak into their lives, because many times they know the right answer. They just need our help to articulate it, to let them, that's possible. Heck, just today, my daughter, my 20, how old's Malin? 24, 25.
They just keep getting older every year.
They had a situation of
they're doing big boy things.
Closing on a house, and they had some money issues, and they came to us for advice.
Like transfer money issues.
Yes.
They were trying to figure out how to get it from one place to another.
We had a solution for them. And
because we're parents and we know, and we walk through it. Yeah.
But we have a doorway to help them, and isn't that what you want, parents? You want the doorway to help them. That's all. And with the lecture, you're trying to do that.
Yeah.
All we're saying is that's ineffective.
Yeah.
And this
good.
other method of listening is much more effective.
And so what I love, one last thing about the listening is when we listen, what we do is we tell them that they can do no wrong in our eyes, that when they fail, it doesn't mean that they're a failure. I mean, that's such a big thing that our kids need to know. And we tell them, instead of, I can't believe you messed up, instead of saying that, you say, oh, I completely understand that you messed up. You're going to mess up 1,000,000 more times before life's all over. And guess what? I love you. And I'm going to help you.
Even though you messed up, you're not a mess up.
Exactly.
You know, I love this, and you know, we're going to figure this out, and you're going to do this, and so I
believe in you. You're a success. We can knock these 6 zeros out. How can I help?
Yeah,
yes.
it's only 5th grade. You're gonna. I
don't care if you fail. I mean, maybe don't tell them that.
But so let's talk about. So hopefully we've given you a contrast of a lecturing situation and even in Proverbs 18:2 it says, "A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion."
Oh, that sums up lecturing so perfectly. Did you hear that? Read it again.
A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Contrast that with Proverbs 20 verse 5. It says, "The purposes of a man's heart," we could say a child's heart, "the purposes of a man's heart are deep waters, but a man of understanding draws them out." And that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to be so enamored with our own opinion. We're trying to draw out the understanding in our child and help guide them. That's the contrast. So let's talk about how we can become a more listening parent. Just some quick things here. One of them is we start out just using open-ended questions to identify the problem.
Right.
Letting them talk. We've talked about that, and just and parents overboard on that. You've always got it in your pocket to come down. Okay, I'm going to have to take your cell phone for a week or whatever that punishment is that you got to do. It's always there, but don't start out. Hey,
don't start with it.
You got 6 zeros. You're doing this, and here's what's happening. Just hey, because you may change. So many times once I listened, I said, I don't need to be so harsh with this. I understand more.
So many times I think our kids are so hard on themselves. That was me as a child. I was so hard on myself, and Macy too, so hard on ourselves that when my parents or when we came down on Macy, it just made it so much worse.
Oh, Molly was the same way.
Yeah, and they didn't want to share it with us because they couldn't stand getting in more trouble because they were beating themselves up on the inside already. And so I agree 100%. Hold back on the punishment and the consequences until you've heard it all, until it's very clear. And then you'll be like, oh, okay, it makes sense to do. It makes sense that the child needs to write a note to the teacher apologizing for having 6 late assignments and causing the teacher more work. I mean, your consequence is going to bubble up to the top. But if you started in the very beginning because you're angry or mad, then you've lost your connection.
And so often, usually, you just made a good comment of maybe apologizing to your teacher. Well, I wouldn't think of that at the first. First thing I'd be like, go to your room. You're grounded. Go do 8 assignments instead of 4. But that comes to the other conclusion is, so you start out by listening and asking open-ended questions and just hearing the child's heart. You want to know, and then though you start to brainstorm with the child towards solutions, because. What's the purpose of a punishment? I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't really want to hurt my child.
Right.
I'm really not trying. But the purpose of a punishment is to change behavior, right? We want to. Maybe if we take their cell phone for a week and they are without the cell phone, they will regret.
They'll find the time to do their 0 assignments,
or they'll regret not having their cell phone, and so they'll
work harder.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, now many times I think we do have vindictive punishment. Go to your room, get out of my hair or whatever. But usually, I mean, almost all of our parents are good. They're good-hearted people that want the best for their kids. Well, guess what? What if we brainstorm solutions? Wouldn't it be best if our child was self-motivated towards the right solution?
Right.
And guess what, parents? I don't know about you, but if it's my idea, then I am going to like it a whole lot more than if it's your idea.
Oh, for sure. Well, you're inspired by your own ideas, and you're wanting to move forward in that because you have personal ownership in the idea versus being told what to do.
So, and as you brainstorm about the future, it could be, how are we going to motivate you to do this? Well, hey, you know what? And let's
How
say
can we do it differently? What's the plan? Let me hear your plan.
And at that point, it could be something like, hey, this has been happening for a while. So, last time I let you slide in this, I'm going to have to take your cell phone. We got to do something to motivate you to do this. Or maybe...
Or even what is going to motivate you to do this.
Yeah.
Should we take away your cell phone? Should we take away your screen time? And even invite them even into the punishment part of that.
So often their punishment's harder than mine.
Yeah. Okay, I need to be punished for 10 weeks. Okay, back off, buddy. How about, 10 days?
Yeah, exactly. So,
which that gives you great insight to how they're beating themselves up on the inside, that you as a parent don't really need to even beat them up, with the lecture and the words and all this stuff, because they're actually doing it themselves.
Well, and we even talk about that sometimes there's natural consequences. And so you let the natural consequences be the punishment but it's more...
even with the 6 assignments, 6 zeros, the chances are they'll only get half credit for that.
Right.
And so their grade is going to suffer from that greatly. So knowing that, that's probably enough. And
then we flip it to how are we going to solve the problem?
Yeah.
And, what are you going to do? Let's talk about the future. And then, the ending of it is always, hey, buddy, hey, Ryan, I'm on your team. Mm-hmm. Hey, Ryan, you're amazing. Mm-hmm. Well, this is a bump in the road.
For
you. You know what, man? A lot of people have gotten zeros before in their lives. Yeah. And, and a lot of people had trouble with school even, had trouble with math class or whatever it is, whatever that issue is. And you know what? They've overcome it, and maybe you had the same issue when you were a kid. But, those are the times to bring those things out and just to affirm and to let them know who they are. So I hope, parents, this is as we kind of wrap this up,
right,
that let's end where we started. We know that you have great aspirations for your kids, great objectives for your kids. You want the best for them.
Right.
We're trying to take today and contrast this lecturing scenario versus a listening scenario and let you see how much more effective the listening scenario is and try to implement. Now, okay, let us encourage you. It's not easy, and so if you mess up today when that happens and you turn into lecturing mode, it's okay. Just, it's something that changes over time.
Well, it's a checkpoint. Come on, parents, we're adults, we have self-control. And so I just challenge you to put a stopgap in there. If you feel like you're heading into lecture mode, then stop yourself, use your self-control. Oh, I'm lecturing right now, stop. And you can look around, read the room, feel the atmosphere, look at your kid. If their head's down and they're not looking at you, then you're in lecturing mode, and just stop. It's just stop. You can stop right there and you can say, okay, time out. I'm lecturing. Yeah, I'm lecturing. Exactly. I'm lecturing. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to lecture anymore. I'm going to stop and let's regroup, and just be honest and be transparent with your kids, because here's the deal. Someday they're going to be parents and they too will lecture. And so if they watch you change directions and do a complete, I'm going to say this wrong, 360?
180.
I always do it wrong. I always get the degrees wrong. Then they're going to do that too. They're going to live and learn from you. And so we just encourage you, parents, take back the ground where it comes to lecturing. We believe in you. You can do it. We've done it. We've stopped lecturing to a big degree.
And you'll be amazed how it opens up the relationship with your kids.
The connections that you make with them.
Remember, our goal is for them to do it on their own.
And we want them to make wise decisions.
Yes.
We want them to have a godly belief system. That's what we want for our kids. And we do that through the doorway of listening to them and drawing it out of them, not telling them and talking at them.
Yeah, that actually, telling them what to do, the lecturing actually pushes them away and pushes them away from us and away from our counsel.
Yeah, so listening is a more effective method toward the result that we want. Just remember that. Listening's a better method. Oh, I'm going into lecture mode. Oh, listening's a better method.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sometimes harder. It seems like it takes longer. But it's so effective. So hope this helps you. And I hope you've enjoyed our podcast today. Catch you next time. Go be crazy parents. crazycoolfamily.com.